Hello and welcome to today's general overview of the BRIC Notice of Funding Opportunity webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to give a few housekeeping notes on today's Zoom webinar. This session is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the FEMA.gov webinar page in the coming days. All participants are currently on mute to minimize background noise, and cameras are turned off for this webinar format. Please use the Q&A feature to submit questions at any time during the webinar. We have a team of subject matter experts reviewing and preparing answers in the background, and we'll provide answers to as many questions as possible at the end of the session. To turn on the closed captioning in Zoom, click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. If you experience any technical issues, try refreshing your browser or rejoining the session. You can also use the Q&A pod at the bottom of the screen for additional assistance. At the end of the session, you'll see a brief survey pop up. We'd really appreciate your feedback to help improve future webinars. At this time, I'd like to introduce Victoria Barton, Associate Administrator for the Office of External Affairs, who will be taking us through opening remarks. Victoria?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your patience during the recent funding lapse. We recognize that this was a challenging period for our workforce, our agency, and most importantly, you all, the communities that we serve. As of April 30th, DHS is fully funded and FEMA is back to operating at full capacity. We are very grateful for this. One of our top priorities is meeting with you today to discuss the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, known as BRIC. And more specifically today, we want to focus on the new funding opportunity that was recently posted. The BRIC program was originally established during President Trump's first administration to advance hazard mitigation and strengthen community resilience. Over time, the program's scope expanded beyond its original intent. Today, BRIC is refocused and improved, returning to its core mission of supporting infrastructure-related projects that deliver real impact. FEMA is committed to strengthening local resilience and delivering efficient, accountable support to communities across the nation. We would not accomplish this goal without you. You know best what your communities need and what projects will have the biggest impact. It is critical that resources reach the communities that need them the most. BRIC is a key tool to make that happen, especially as we approach hurricane season and beyond. The goal of BRIC is straightforward: to save lives, protect property, and reduce the cost of future disasters. On March 25th of this year, FEMA published a Notice of Funding Opportunity, making $1 billion available for hazard mitigation projects nationwide. This funding opportunity reflects best practices for mitigation with a renewed focus on infrastructure-related projects that save lives and reduce disaster costs. FEMA's investment will generate jobs, protect property, strengthen infrastructure, reduce future disaster costs, and most importantly, protect and save lives. The program is designed to prioritize infrastructure resilience by funding construction-ready projects and incentivizing adoption of the latest hazard-resistant building codes. It's also designed to accelerate funding by eliminating phase projects, simplifying the national competition scoring system, and removing sub-application scoring by the National Review Panel. Additionally, the focus is to empower states, territories, and tribal nations by removing funding for hazard mitigation planning and non-financial direct technical assistance, maximizing local responsibility for resilience and risk reduction. Additionally, Its established funding categories remain for state, tribal, and territory set-asides, building code plus-ups, and the national competition. For this funding opportunity, FEMA has reduced bureaucratic hurdles, focused funding on major infrastructure projects, and shifted responsibilities to the states, reducing federal overreach. When done correctly, mitigation activities save lives and reduce the cost of future disasters. We are confident that this improved and refocused BRIC program will deliver results and make America safer. During today's webinar, FEMA staff will walk you through the eligibility, application, best practices, and also how to navigate FEMA Go. Please take advantage of the information shared here today and make use of the time allotted for questions and answers. We hope this session will help all of you submit strong applications for projects that will have a real impact on your community's ability to weather potential disasters like floods, fires, earthquakes, and hurricanes. Once again, I thank you all for being here today and making the time. And now I'm going to hand things over to our program team to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria, for kicking us off. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lauren Garrity, the BRIC Branch Chief. I want to take a quick moment to express how excited we are to be launching this new Notice of Funding opportunity for the BRIC program. We thank everyone for joining us today to hear more about it. Before we dive into the details of the new funding opportunity, let's take a quick look at today's agenda. We'll begin with an overview of the BRIC program, which provides funding for eligible long-term solutions to reduce the impact of future disasters. Next, we'll highlight key information that applicants and sub-applicants need to know, with the focus on what's new or different in the fiscal year 2024 and 2025 grant cycle, and the opportunities for building resilient communities. As we move into application best practices and common pitfalls, we'll focus on what makes a BRIC application strong and what issues most often lead to ineligibility. We'll also cover the application process using FEMA grants outcomes, offer insights into navigating the system, and share resources to support your grant application and implementation. Our goal today is to equip you with the knowledge and tools needed to be successful in this grant program to enhance the resilience of your communities. We will close out with closing remarks from the Hazard Mitigation Directorate Assistant Administrator, Kristen Fontenot, and then we will open the floor for questions. For its fiscal year 2024 and 2025 funding opportunity, BRIC prioritizes investments in infrastructure and construction projects that provide immediate and measurable risk reduction to communities that are vulnerable to natural hazards. We also seek to increase the geographic distribution of funds across the nation through this funding opportunity, and we seek to maximize state and local responsibility for resilience by focusing federal resources on projects that directly support infrastructure and risk reduction, rather than investing in a wide range of activities as we've done in the past. This year, the program emphasizes the adoption and enforcement of modern building codes, but limits capability and capacity building activities to those that are directly tied to infrastructure resilience. Funding for new hazard mitigation plans, plan updates, and non-financial direct technical assistance has been eliminated from this NOFO. This reinforces the state's role in capacity building and empowers local entities to lead resilience and risk reduction efforts in their jurisdictions. The program caps funding amounts for individual projects and applicants to ensure a broader distribution of investments and prioritizes the selection of new applicants, sub-applicants, and small impoverished communities in the national competition. By prioritizing construction projects that are ready to implement And by increasing the geographic distribution of hazard mitigation investments, BRIC seeks to accelerate and improve nationwide project award and delivery. Our application period opened on Wednesday, March 25th at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time, and it closes on Thursday, July 23rd at 3:00 Eastern Time. If you have not already, mark the application period closing date and time in your calendars. Understanding who is eligible is the first step to accessing BRIC funding and ensuring your application can move forward in the process. Grant opportunities are accessible to a wide range of entities, including 50 states, U.S. territories, federally recognized tribal governments, the District of Columbia, and subapplicants such as local governments, tribal governments, state agencies, and tribal agencies. While private nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, businesses, and private citizens are not eligible to apply directly for BRIC funding, these entities may still participate by partnering with eligible subapplicants, such as local governments, tribal governments, and state agencies, to pursue their mitigation funding needs. Subapplications are typically developed at the local level and then submitted to the state. The state then reviews and prioritizes those subapplications before submitting them to FEMA for final review. Federally recognized tribes may apply directly to FEMA as applicants or as subapplicants through a state, depending on tribal and state laws in their jurisdictions. Tribes are encouraged to reach out to their FEMA tribal liaison to discuss available options. FEMA is also hosting a tribal webinar tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. Eastern Time for our tribal partners. Each state, territory, and federally recognized tribe may submit one BRIC application per funding cycle. This application can include multiple sub-applications for different projects. Federally recognized tribal nations that have had a major disaster declaration under the Stafford Act in the past 7 years, or are located entirely or partially within a state or territory with such a declaration, are eligible to apply for BRIC funding as applicants or as subapplicants through eligible states and territories. Due to numerous major disaster declarations, all states, territories, and federally recognized tribal nations currently meet these criteria and are eligible to apply for this funding opportunity. It's important to note that some states may have already initiated their notice of intent phase, so local communities are encouraged to contact their state officials to learn more about the specific process and timelines for their funding opportunities. For the fiscal year 2024 and 2025 Notice of Funding Opportunity, BRIC has made a total of $1 billion available. The state and territory allocation has $112 million available. Each state or territory can receive up to $2 million in federal share. These funds can support hazard mitigation projects and capability and capacity building activities, but only when those capability and capacity building activities are directly tied to strengthening infrastructure resilience. The tribal set-aside has another $50 million available to tribal nations. Capability and capacity building activities are capped at $2 million in federal share for the tribal set-aside. As with states, capability and capacity building activities here must be tied directly to infrastructure resilience. There are separate Building Code Plus Up pots of funding as well. We have $56 million available for states and territories and another $25 million for tribal nations. These are specifically to support the adoption and enforcement of modern hazard-resistant building codes. Finally, our largest funding category, the national competition, makes $757 million available. The maximum federal share per project is now $20 million, which is down from $50 million in prior years. Phased projects are no longer eligible for funding, and technical assistance is more limited than before, so projects need to be more complete when you apply. This year, no applicant may receive more than 15% of the total available funding in this NOFO, combined across all categories, including management costs. This means that no applicant may receive more than $150 million across all funding categories. Here are a few important program changes to keep in mind. Again, capability and capacity building activities must directly support infrastructure resilience. BRIC does not fund new hazard mitigation plans or plan updates through the Fiscal Year 24-25 Notice of Funding Opportunity. And there is no enhanced cost share this year for community disaster resilience zones. A quick note on cost share. The standard cost share is 75% federal and 25% non-federal. For small impoverished communities, FEMA can increase the federal share to fund up to 90% federal share and 10% non-federal share. Management costs can be funded at 100% federal up to the program limits. Another quick note on management costs. For subrecipient management costs, subapplicants can submit up to 5% of the subapplication budget. This must be added to the scope of work section and identified as a line item in the cost estimate section of subapplications in FEMA Go. Subrecipient management costs are included in the total subapplication budget and therefore will count toward the caps for each funding bucket. Our FEMA Go experts will show you more on how to do this later in the webinar. For recipient management costs, applicants can submit separate management cost subapplications for up to 10% of the application budget to administer and manage award and subaward activities. Recipient management costs are requested separately and will not count toward the $2 million state or territory allocation caps. We'll talk more about how to structure applications and how to avoid common problems later in this webinar. The main takeaway here is to 1, understand which bucket of funding you're applying for, 2, know the applicable caps, and 3, to make sure your activity is tied to infrastructure risk reduction and is consistent with the fiscal year 2024-2025 program changes. When deciding which project best suits your community, refer to the Hazard Mitigation Program and Policy Guide for comprehensive information on eligible activities. Eligible activities fall into 3 types: hazard mitigation projects, capability and capacity building activities, and management costs. At a high level, projects must be cost-effective. They must reduce or eliminate risk and damage from natural hazards. They must meet the latest consensus codes. They must align with the community's hazard mitigation plan and agency priorities. And they must meet all environmental and historic preservation requirements. I'll dive into each of these in a bit more detail here. First, to be cost-effective, a hazard mitigation project must be specifically designed to enhance resilience and reduce the risk of injuries, loss of life, and damage to property, including critical services and facilities. Second, to reduce or eliminate risk, and damage from natural hazards, mitigation projects should consider future conditions, such as changing weather patterns and changes in a community's risk profile, like anticipated population growth, increased infrastructure demands, and evolving land use. Infrastructure projects should also be designed to address both current and emerging threats over the lifespan of the infrastructure. For example, projects that incorporate future conditions are more likely to minimize loss of life, property damage, and economic disruption now and in the future, therefore supporting safer and stronger communities. Third, to meet the latest consensus codes, such as the 2021 or 2024 International Building Code, hazard mitigation projects must conform to the 2 latest published editions of relevant consensus-based codes, specifications, and standards that incorporate the latest hazard-resistant designs. Fourth, hazard mitigation projects must align with the applicant's state or tribal hazard mitigation plan, as well as the subapplicant's local or tribal hazard mitigation plan. Applicants are required to specify in their BRIC application where the need for the proposed project types is referenced or included in their approved hazard mitigation plan. Finally, all activities under BRIC must be in conformance with all applicable environmental, planning, and historic preservation, or EHP, laws, regulations, executive orders, and agency policies as defined in the Hazard Mitigation Assistance Program and Policy Guide. This concludes our high-level overview of the fiscal year 2024-2025 Notice of Funding Opportunity. Next, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Rafa Canizares and Kelly Flicka, 2 of our BRIC section chiefs and subject matter experts, to begin walking through the new national competition scoring criteria and describe how to craft a competitive application. Rafa?
Thank you, Lauren. Now that we have covered eligibility, funding, and key program changes, let's turn our attention to the national competition. This funding bucket makes up over 75% of the total funding in this year's cycle and is how applicants and subapplicants access funds for large infrastructure projects up to $20 million. It is a highly competitive part of the BRIC program where projects from across the country are evaluated and scored based on a specific criteria. Therefore, understanding these criteria is essential for developing a strong competitive application. So let's start with what is new in the evaluation criteria of the national competition for this year. So the evaluation criteria has been simplified. The technical and qualitative criteria have been combined into 6 criteria and the total score reduced from 200 to 100 points, making the evaluation process faster and easier for applicants, reducing complexity compared to previous years. We have a clear program focus. The new scoring system prioritizes infrastructure projects, readiness criteria, mandatory building codes, and encourages participation from new applicants, subapplicants, ensuring resources are directed to projects that have an immediate impact and are ready to be implemented. We also have streamlined the review process and is now more efficient, allowing for quicker decisions and clearer communication of program priorities. The National Review Panel will not be used this round. Instead, FEMA will use an internal process to review and score projects against the published criteria. In the following slides, the 6 evaluation criteria will be described, including information about how projects are evaluated and what you can do to maximize your score. So the first criterion is the infrastructure project construction readiness criterion and is tiered. Subapplicants can earn a maximum score of 30 points for this one. In the subapplication, the subapplicant should explain how the project mitigates natural hazard risk to critical physical structures, facilities, and systems that provide support to a community, its population, and its economy. In this context, critical can be defined by your own community, and it could be anything that is important to the function of your community. Please note that purely residential properties do not receive infrastructure points. This criterion assesses the extent to which the proposed project is sufficiently developed to proceed to award and start construction without significant delay. The following scoring categories are considered. If a project contains basic conceptualization and design, at least 30% design, the project will receive 5 points. Infrastructure projects, including more refined and detailed design, including major systems, materials, dimensions, and draft specification with a design level of 30% or greater, will receive 15 points. Infrastructure projects with detailed drawings and specifications for bidding, permitting, and actual construction with a design level of 90% or greater will receive 30 points. These documents may include completed environmental and historic preservation, compliance documentation. To ensure that FEMA evaluates correctly this criterion, these are some applicant tips. Clearly describe in the sub-application how the project agrees with how infrastructure is defined in the NOFO. Clearly identify key design documents, for example, plans, specifications, technical reports that are signed and stamped by a licensed professional engineer or other certified licensed design professional, and state clearly in the sub-application the design level and what that means. Note in the sub-application the status of permitting and environmental planning and historic preservation review, and attach any reference and reference any relevant document and permits. The new criterion for new applicant or sub-applicant can provide up to 15 points for the project. So the sub-application will receive 15 points if it is submitted by a sub-applicant that has never been selected in the BRIC national competition, or if it is submitted by an applicant, which means a state, territorial, or tribal government that has never had a project selected in the BRIC national competition. Applicants or sub-applicants can confirm their selection history in the BRIC national competition in open FEMA. FEMA will confirm an applicant's and sub-applicant's prior BRIC national competition selection history and assign the score. The third criterion has the main objective of evaluating the sub-applicant status regarding building code adoption to the most recent versions of the International Building Codes and International Residential Codes, which are the 2021 and 2024, and also evaluating the sub-applicant's building code enforcement. Evaluation is done in 2 steps. In sub-criterion 3.1, sub-applications are evaluated for building code adoption and enforcement, and the maximum point allotment for this sub-criterion is 20 points. If the sub-application does not receive any point for sub-criterion 3.1, then it will be evaluated for sub-criterion 3.2, where it could receive a maximum of 5 points. The general tips for this criterion mainly refer to the information that the sub-applicant should provide in FEMA Go. For example, any documentation about the building code adoption and building code effectiveness grading schedule rating, or about any higher standards that have been implemented. More information is provided in the following slides. To receive building code adoption points, the adopted building codes must be based on the 2 most recently published editions of 2021 or 2024 of both the International Building Code and the International Residential Code. The sub-application will receive 5 points if the community where the project will be developed has locally adopted building codes. The sub-application will receive an additional 5 points if the locally adopted building codes by the community are based on the applicant's mandatory state travel territory-wide adoption of building codes. FEMA tracks the building code adoption status for state, local, tribal, and territorial governments across using the building code adoption tracking tool, BCAT. Subapplicants should review their adoption status in BCAT, and if differs from their actual status, they should submit a copy or a link to the ordinance showing the latest building code adoption by the community so that FEMA can consider this in their scoring. This map shows the National Building Code Adoption Status Map at the state level for the 2 most recent editions of the IBC and IRC for 2021 and 2024, based on the information in the Building Code Adoption Tracking Tool, BCAT, as of March 31st, 2026. Federally recognized tribal government code adoption status will be determined for tribal applicants after the close of the application period. Building code enforcement will be evaluated using the Building Code Effectiveness Grading Schedule, BCEX, which is an independent assessment of a community's building code adoption and enforcement activities. To receive the 10-point allotment for local building code enforcement, a subapplicant must have a BCEX rating between 1 and 5, which is considered by FEMA as a disaster-resistant code, and the rating has to be ready when the application is submitted. This requirement can be met by either their commercial or residential rating. Bureau states have their own insurance rating organization that is not part of the Insurance Services Office, ISO. Bureau states must provide a state-verified BCEX score at the state level. In the slide, you can find the 5 Bureau state organizations. These are some tips for applicants regarding BCEX ratings. Communities intending to apply for BRIC funding are encouraged to initiate the process as soon as possible. Request a BCEX survey at the ISO mitigation website, and any questions that you have, you can refer to verisk.com, and they will answer anything about the BCEX survey options. Finally, if a project sub-application has not received any points in Subcriterion 3.1, 5 points could be allotted if the sub-applicant can provide a narrative demonstrating that they hold higher standards for the primary hazard that they have identified in their sub-application and that their project intends to mitigate. Some examples are provided in the program support material, and some are listed in the slide. Sub-applicants should submit the narrative in FEMA Go in a file with a title including the text Alternative Higher Standards to be considered for these points. Sub-application will receive 5 points if the community or communities that project benefits meet the small impoverished community definition at Title 42 United States Code Section 5133A, which means that they have a population of 3,000 or fewer, and they're economically disadvantaged, with the residents having an average per capita annual income not exceeding 80% of the national per capita income, based on the best available data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Jurisdictions meeting the small impoverished community definition are also eligible for up to 90% federal, 10% non-federal cost share. Some tips for the subapplicant that will help FEMA determine if there are a small impoverished community are: ensure the community and location sections accurately identify the small impoverished community, including Community Information System, CIS info where applicable. Answer yes to the question, is this a small impoverished community, in the budget section in FEMA Go. If another community is applying on behalf of a small impoverished community, be sure that you include a letter authorizing the application signed by an authorized community representative, and the letter should also provide contact information for both the community and the applicant or subapplicant. You should also attach documentation supporting a small impoverished status using data from the U.S. Census American Community Survey, ACS, on population and per capita income. Criterion number 5 evaluates sub-applications on how they reduce risk, and evaluates as well the strength of the project to effectively reduce risk, increase resilience within the community based on their primary natural hazard risk, and how they realize ancillary benefits other than the project's primary risk reduction objective. So in order to receive the full 20 points, detailed descriptions must clearly and completely address all the points that were mentioned. Partial or less complete answers will receive partial score. So subapplicants should include a clear description of how the project addresses these items in the narrative of the scope of work section in FEMA Go, or in a clearly labeled attachment. This narrative should focus on how the project achieves risk reduction and specify what area or what community benefits from it. How the proposed project will improve resilience. Resilience refers to the capacity to prepare for expected hazards, adapt to evolving conditions, and withstand and quickly recover from disruptions. And also how the proposed project will generate ancillary benefits and clearly describe those benefits. It's important that the subapplication references any data, information, and documents that are provided. And these documents should clearly support and demonstrate how the project complies with the objectives of this criterion. The last criterion evaluates how the project will be implemented. And so it will evaluate the strength of the project to how the project deal with the cost management, how manage the schedule, how successfully implement the project and the plan, and who is going to be involved as the technical and managerial staff in the project. So to receive the full 10 points, detailed descriptions must clearly and completely address all these points. Partial or less complete answers will receive partial score. It's important that subapplicants include a clear description of how the project addresses these items in the narrative of the scope of work section in FEMA Go, or in a clearly labeled attachment. And focus this narrative on the following. Describe how the subapplicant is approaching the main issues of cost management of an infrastructure project. Provide a detailed schedule for the project that includes at a minimum the key project milestones and how the schedule will be managed and controlled. Describe the monitoring strategy and benchmarking that will be established to define progress and to evaluate the successful implementation of the project. And identify the project manager that will oversee the project delivery, as well as the technical staff from the county, township engineer, project engineer, planner, and any other resources that will be used to successfully implement the project. Subapplicant could include examples of similar projects, either by project type or project size, where some of these approaches and processes were successfully implemented to demonstrate how the project complies with the objective of this criterion. And now I'm gonna pass it to my colleague, Kelly Flicka, who's gonna discuss application best practices and pitfalls.
Thanks, Rafa. As we move into the next section, we'll focus on application best practices and minimum eligibility requirements for BRIC. These slides are designed to help applicants and subapplicants avoid common pitfalls and ensure their submissions meet program standards. We'll cover what FEMA looks for in a complete and eligible application, including key documentation, scope of work, and alignment with program priorities. By following these best practices and ensuring or understanding eligibility criteria, you can maximize your chances of success. As you're working on your sub-application, it's important to double check that it meets all the requirements to be eligible. These are some of the most common reasons sub-applications are found ineligible during eligibility and completeness reviews. Taking the time to ensure your sub-application is complete and aligns with these requirements will help your project move forward smoothly. The NOFO is a great resource to help guide you through each of these requirements, as well as the HMA policy guide. For example, does the applicant or subapplicant have an approved mitigation plan at time of the application period close? Applicants and subapplicants must have a FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan in place by the application deadline. If the plan is missing or expired, the application is automatically ineligible. Is a detailed budget submitted? A complete, itemized budget must be included. Lump sum budgets or missing budget details are not accepted and will result in ineligibility. Is the activity eligible in the program? The proposed activity must be eligible under BRIC as defined in the NOFO and program guidance. Is the scope of work complete and well described? The scope of work must be clear, detailed, and aligned with the project's goals, schedule, and budget. Incomplete or vague descriptions are a common reason for ineligibility. Is the applicant or subapplicant eligible? Only eligible entities can apply. We covered this earlier in the presentation. Cost effectiveness. If applicable, did you submit a benefit cost analysis? For projects that require a benefit cost analysis, or BCA, the analysis must be included and demonstrate cost effectiveness. Missing or incomplete BCAs are a frequent reason for denial. If the project is under 1 million, have you submitted a narrative that includes qualitative and quantitative data demonstrating the benefits and cost effectiveness of the project? Is there confirmation that the project does not duplicate other federally funded programs? The project cannot duplicate funding or activities already covered by other federal programs. If there's duplication, the sub-application will be found ineligible. We see some frequent issues with BRIC sub-applications and have some recommended best practices to address them. A key takeaway is the importance of submitting complete and well-organized documentation. Missing or unclear attachments are a common reason for ineligibility. Please use a complete and acronym-free title that is reflective of the activities in your project. Required documents include environmental and historic preservation documentation, which we'll dive into more detail momentarily, correct GPS coordinates, and consultation correspondence with state and other federal agencies. Be sure to provide accurate information in the EHP checklist. It's also critical to ensure your project aligns with program requirements and is submitted under the correct funding category and sub-application type in FEMA Go. Management costs are another area where mistakes happen. Be sure to request them in the right place and at the right time, as additional funds can't be added later. If you're ever unsure about a requirement or how to categorize your project, don't hesitate to reach out to your state hazard mitigation officer, tribal liaison, or FEMA regional office for guidance. Think of your application as telling a story. Every section, scope, budget, schedule, and supporting documents should reinforce the same message and demonstrate that you've thought through the details. Most of the problems with technical feasibility are related to unclear information and/or missing information and documentation. Another important problem is not having a clear description of the level or protection and not meeting the design standard. When developing the subapplication, keep in mind, technical feasibility is about showing that your project isn't just a good idea on paper. It's actually achievable, safe, and effective in the real world. FEMA reviewers need to be confident that your project can be built as proposed, will function as intended, and will truly reduce risk. This means your application should be internally consistent and supported by credible technical evidence. It's not enough to say a project will work. You need to show how and why using recognized standards and clear documentation. This helps FEMA quickly verify your project's readiness and effectiveness. Ultimately, strong technical feasibility makes your project more competitive and helps ensure it can move forward smoothly if selected for funding. We see common pitfalls when subapplicants document their cost effectiveness. FEMA needs to see that the benefits of your project clearly outweigh the costs. The benefit cost analysis, or BCA, is how you demonstrate this. A strong BCA is more than just running the numbers. It's about providing clear, well-supported evidence for every input and assumption. For example, missing building-specific information like type, use, or lowest floor elevation, or unclear data about the population served by utilities can make it difficult for reviewers to validate your project's benefits. One of the most common pitfalls we see is submitting inconsistent or incomplete BCA documentation. This includes cases where multiple BCAs are submitted, the benefit cost ratio in the subapplication doesn't match the attachments, or the analysis can't be recreated with the provided documentation. Reviewers need to be able to follow your calculations and understand your data sources. It's also essential to use the correct BCA tools and modules. Using the wrong approach or applying pre-calculated benefits when they don't fit the project can result in an ineligible application. Another frequent issue is when the basis for estimating damages in the BCA is unclear or unsupported, or when the scenario events aren't justified with solid information. Make sure your supporting documentation matches your analysis and use justification boxes in the BCA toolkit whenever possible. On many occasions, the cost-effectiveness narrative for less than $1 million projects does not have enough information to develop a benefit cost ratio, or BCR. Submit a complete narrative that includes qualitative and quantitative data demonstrating the benefits and cost effectiveness of the project following FEMA instructions. Next, Joju Falomu will discuss common pitfalls associated with environmental and historic preservation.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to talk about the common application problems and how to avoid them. Environmental planning and historic preservation compliance is very important. And I'm stressing that because it is required by law. Every BRIC application must pass through environmental compliance review before funding can be awarded for the project. A common pitfall is waiting until too late in the project development or execution stages to address EHP requirements. So the best practice is for a sub-applicant to front-load EHP concerns at the earliest possible stage of application development. That is, while developing the project scope of work. While developing the scope of works, you identify the permits that are required and any potential impact of the project on biological and historic resources. This early front-loading of EHP requirements can help streamline your EHP review as well as your application, and it will avoid delays in EHP review. You must upload any environmental studies, any photographs, any maps, and clearly reference them in your application. These are essential requirements for EHP review, and if they are provided upfront, it will reduce requests for information. Required documents include all EHP documentation, accurate site descriptions, including GPS coordinates in decimal degrees, any ground disturbing activities, any consultations and correspondences, emails that you had with state agencies such as your SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, and in the case of a tribe, with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, and other federal regulatory agencies such as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. These are all partner agencies that have input into the EHP review and compliance process. In FEMA Go, you must provide accurate information in the EHP checklists. For example, the checklist will ask you for the age of any buildings, the date of construction of any facility, especially for structures that are older than 45 years old. There are a lot of EHP resources that are included in this presentation in the resources slide. Please utilize them, consult them, and use the NOFO. Consult the NOFO for any EHP-specific information you need before you submit your project sub-application. Additional EHP resources are available in the various technical job aids that are available on FEMA.gov. So if you're looking at floodplains, wetlands, and water impacts, please describe any work that is going to be done in these areas and outline the mitigation measures that apply to your sub-application. I will now hand over the presentation to our FEMA Go expert, Kalpana Singh, to walk through how to apply for a BRIC grant in FEMA Go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jojo. Good afternoon, everybody. We are going to walk through how to apply to BRIC in FEMA's online grant system, as you call FEMA Grants Outcome or FEMA Go. We'll cover who needs to do what in the system, key steps for setting up your account, and the important deadlines you need to be aware of. All eligible applicants must submit their BRIC applications through FEMA Go. FEMA Go provides technical user manual and support materials in FEMA Go specifically for hazard mitigation assistance grants. And we strongly encourage you to use those resources as you prepare your applications. The application period opens on March 25th, 2026. If you're experiencing technical issues with FEMA Go that are outside your control, you must notify FEMA no later than 3 p.m. Eastern Time on July 21st, 2026, so that we have enough time to help you with any of the issues you're having. All applications must be submitted and received in FEMA Go by 3 p.m. Eastern Time on July 23rd, 2026. Late applications, unfortunately, will not be accepted. First-time FEMA Go users should determine if applying as the applicant or subapplicant. If applying as subapplicant, you should connect with the organization that will be submitting the grant application, such as a state, tribe, or a territorial government. Then confirm your SAM.gov account and unique identity identifier, or as you call UEI, are active. Set up your login.gov account using your work email. Connect with eBiz POC identified on SAM.gov account to add an authorized organization representative, or as you call AOR, to the team. Refer to FEMA Go Startup Guide for more information and troubleshooting scenarios. And if you are a returning FEMA Go user, then check your SAM.gov account and UEI are active. This is an annual renewal process. AORs, please review the team members and update roles. Remove team members who are no longer with the organizations. Ensure at least one AOR is on the team. Redundancy is better, so if you have more than one, if one person departs, you have another one to ensure the continuity. Ensure all team members can log in. Refer to FEMA Go Startup Guide for more information, please. For sub-applications, the sub-organization authorized representative, or SAR, is the person who creates the sub-application in FEMA Go and links it to the parent organization through which it'll be submitted. It is important to choose the correct title and sub-application type up front, because you would not be able to change once the sub-application has been submitted to FEMA. Management cost applications are only for the main grant level applicant. Sub-applicants will include their management costs as sub-recipient management costs within the budget section of sub-application. Each section of the sub-applications allows documents uploads. So use those fields, please, to attach your scope of work, budget support, maps, and other required materials. For more detail, you could refer to FEMA's pass-through application and sub-application guides for FEMA Go. The sub-organization authorized representative, or SAR, must create the sub-application and link it to the parent organization through which it is to be submitted. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-application type. You cannot change the title, and you cannot change the sub-appli or sub-application type 1 submitted to FEMA. Management cost applications are for grant level applicants only. Sub-applicants have SRMC built into the budget section. Each section of the sub-applications allows for document upload. Please refer to FEMA Go Pass-Through Application and Sub-Application Guide for more information. This slide shows where to add sub-recipient management costs, or SRMC, in FEMA Go system. To see the management cost option, you first need to add at least one other cost type, such as construction or equipment, into your budget. After you have entered the initial cost estimate, scroll back up in the budget section and then select the blue Add Cost Type button. At this point, management cost will appear in the drop-down menu. Please select management cost and then add your SRMC lines. Line items such as salaries, supplies, travel, or office space rental. Also clearly describing how each will support managing your BRIC subaward. SRMC can be up to 5% of your total budget. It is critical to include SRMC at the time of application. You would not be able to add it after submission, so please double check your budget before you submit. Once you've selected management cost as a cost type, the next step is to add the specific line items that describe exactly how you'll use those funds. You'll enter each item separately so FEMA can clearly see what you're requesting and why. Common SRMC examples include equipment, office space rental, staff salaries, supplies, and travel directly related to managing and administering your BRIC subaward. These costs must be reasonable, necessary, and clearly linked to the grant management activities, not to the construction or implementation work itself. If you have multiple types of management costs, you can add each one by selecting additional items from drop-down menu. Before you finalize your budget, confirm that the total SRMC request does not exceed 5% of your total sub-application budget, and that every line item is clearly labeled and justified in your narrative and supporting documents. Reminder, sub-applicants must add SRMC as a separate line on the budget. If not required a submission, additional funds will not be provided later. Now I will hand back to my colleague Kelly to share important resources for the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalpna. Finally, we'll cycle through a few slides that contain links to resources that may be helpful as you develop your sub-application. FEMA offers a range of resources, including guides, toolkits, and online platforms to support development and submission of BRIC and hazard mitigation assistance grant applications. Some of these resources include programmatic support or programmatic materials, like the program support material for the evaluation criteria for the BRIC national competition, BRIC fact sheet, and BRIC website. HMA guides, including the 2025 Hazard Mitigation Assistance Program and Policy Guide, HMA Cost Share Guide, and HMA Job Aids. Other resources that may be helpful related to benefit cost analysis, FEMA Go, building codes, hazard mitigation assistance, environmental and historic preservation, and Buy America are featured on the right. Applicants should review program materials, eligibility requirements, and compliance guidance to ensure their documents meet all criteria for upcoming NOFOs. FEMA helplines are available to support applicants and subapplicants with application system issues, program questions, benefit cost analysis, building science guidance, and Build America, Buy America Act compliance. Subapplicants are encouraged to reach out to their state hazard mitigation officer as the primary point of contact for questions and assistance. You can also find the contact information for these helplines on the BRIC page at FEMA.gov. Visit www.fema.gov/BRIC-contacts for details. With that, I will turn it over to John Gargiola, who will help guide us through the question and answer portion of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Now that we've concluded with the presentation portion, we will now move into the question and answer session. And looks like we'll have about approximately 10 to 15 minutes to go through. And if you haven't already done so, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A pod located at the bottom of your screen. If you enter your questions there, our subject matter experts will do their best to address it. Now, please note again that the chat function is disabled and should not be used for the Q&A. And so as we begin with the first question, I will be assisted by Lauren Garrity. Lauren, so question number 1. Will the PowerPoint slides and a recording be posted following this presentation?
Thank you, John, and really important and helpful question. Yes, we've recorded the session, and the recording will be posted on the FEMA.gov events page in the coming days. So thank you for that clarification.
Yes, thank you. Question number 2. Does BRIC allow sub-applications for phased projects?
So this is a great question. And phased projects are one of the areas where this year's NOFO differs from our past NOFOs. And so in short, no, under this funding opportunity, we are not accepting phased projects. And this is because this year's NOFO, the FY 24-25 NOFO, prioritizes construction-ready projects and emphasizes speed to delivery. And so we've seen in our past iterations of the program that phased projects were taking a long time to get to construction. So in short, unfortunately, no, this year's funding opportunity does not consider phased projects as an eligible project type. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Lauren, for that clarification. Next is about plans, I believe. Is developing or updating a state, tribal, or local hazard mitigation plan eligible?
Thanks, John. This is another important clarifying point between this year's NOFO and our past NOFOs. So again, development of new or updates to hazard mitigation plans are actually not eligible activities under this current funding opportunity under any conditions. And this is again kind of shifting the responsibility of planning and project development to states and local entities. So in short, no. But it's a really important question and really appreciate that because that's one of the kind of key differences between our past years and this year's NOFO.
Lauren, thanks. Yes, very important. Thank you for that. Our next question is about EHP. So what information do we need to submit for environmental and historic preservation compliance review?
Great question. And as Joju mentioned earlier, EHP is a critical component of the project review process. So for EHP review, basically the more information you provide about the project, the better. And so this would include things like photographs of the project location, accurate GPS coordinates in decimal degrees. If there's ground disturbance, the depth and dimensions of the disturbance are helpful and needed. Then if work is being done to buildings, the building age, as well as photographs of all sides of the building are needed, not just the side of the building where work is to be done. We actually have, so FEMA has an EHP checklist that's posted on FEMA.gov, and this gives a comprehensive list of questions and of data that will be needed for an application. And so I would encourage applicants and subapplicants to go to FEMA.gov and refer to the EHP checklist for a complete set of information and recommendations.
Lauren, thank you very much for that detailed answer. Next, we have an infrastructure question. So, does an applicant need to focus on a specific infrastructure project for scoping to be eligible?
Thank you, John. So this is an important piece as well. So our funding opportunity outlines that project scoping activities for specific infrastructure are eligible. And so the phrase directly supporting infrastructure means that activities have a clear, immediate, and primary purpose of improving, protecting, or enabling the construction, resilience, or operation of critical infrastructure systems. And so this would include transportation, utilities, wastewater, water infrastructure, communications, public buildings, and other critical facilities. So in short, project scoping does need to be directly tied to infrastructure.
Thank you for that, Lauren. Let's see, benefit cost analysis. Is FEMA providing any support for benefit cost analysis activities?
Thanks, John. Great question. So FEMA is not providing direct benefit cost analysis support to applicants. Applicants, including our tribal nations, are encouraged to use the FEMA Benefit Cost Analysis or BCA toolkit and then available guidance that's posted online. If applicants encounter technical issues or if they need help or clarification on BCA requirements, we do have a helpline available. And so they can email the BCA helpline at bchelpline@fema.dhs.gov. And they can help out.
Great response. Thank you. Lauren, the next question is about national competition and scoring. Very important question. Referencing the national competition scoring, what if a community was selected under fiscal year 2023, but they never received funding or withdrew due to the delay in funding? Do they not receive points?
This is a great question. So if an applicant was selected in the national competition under fiscal year 2023, or in any other previous fiscal year cycles for that matter, they would not receive points for being a new selection in the fiscal year 24-25 funding opportunity. And that's regardless of whether they've ultimately received funding or withdrew the application. So we're really focused on selections here, not on receipt of funds. So once a subapplicant has been selected, they're no longer considered a new applicant or subapplicant for scoring purposes in future grant opportunities for the BRIC program, including this one. I hope that helps clarify. It's a great question.
Yes, Lauren, that does. Thank you very much. If we could go back to environmental compliance again, here's another question. How long does an environmental compliance review typically take, and what factors impact the duration of the environmental compliance review?
Another good one. The duration of EHP really depends on the scope and complexity of the subapplication and on how the project impacts biological and cultural resources at the specific project location. So for example, if the scope of the project is smaller in geographic span and the impact on resources is minimal, EHP can take less time. But for larger projects, the sub-application may require more time. And another element that impacts EHP is if the scope of work is clearly described and required information to complete the EHP review is complete. And so if FEMA doesn't have to issue as many requests for information, that will also truncate the timeline. I'm going to plug the EHP checklist again. So as folks are completing their applications and sub-applications, please refer to the EHP checklist on FEMA.gov, and that will help you ensure that all pertinent documentation is submitted with the sub-application and that EHP review goes as quickly as possible. And again, if all documentation is submitted, that decreases also the possibility of requests for information and will sort of expedite that timeline as much as possible. So that's a great question. And just another plug for our EHP checklist that's posted on FEMA.gov.
Oh, definitely agree. Thank you so much, Lauren. Here's another question about disaster declarations. Is there a requirement for a state, territory, or tribe to have had a major disaster declaration within, say, X number of years in order to be eligible?
Yeah, so there is. Applicant eligibility does include having a major disaster declaration under the Stafford Act in the previous 7 years. However, due to the COVID-19 disaster declarations, all states, territories, and federally recognized tribes are eligible for funding in this grant cycle because they have met the 7-year requirement due to the COVID-19 disaster declarations. So yes, there is a requirement, and for this cycle, everyone has met it.
Very good, Lauren. Thank you. Can I ask you about period of performance? This question, in previous BRIC funding opportunities, the period of performance of 36 months had start dates depending upon the award date. Now, is that the case with this funding opportunity as well, given the focus on shovel-ready projects? Or are you changing the period of performance?
Interesting question. And one of the things that remains unchanged from previous funding opportunities. So the period of performance remains unchanged in this funding opportunity and is still 36 months from the date of award, unless otherwise specified by FEMA. So this continues our approach from previous years and will help us focus on timely implementation-ready projects that have immediate impacts and deliver rapid risk reduction.
Understood. Okay, continuing that period of performance. Lauren, can BRIC funds be used to satisfy the cost share or matching requirements of, say, other federal grant programs?
Unfortunately, BRIC funds can't be used to satisfy the cost share or matching requirements for other federal or non-federal grant programs. Federal funds may not be used as a match for other federal award unless the program's authorizing statute specifically provides that federal funds may be available for the program. Then they can be applied to the cost sharing requirement of other federal programs. And so since this isn't specifically authorized in Section 203 of the Stafford Act, which is BRIC's authorizing statute, BRIC cannot be used for cost share requirements for other federal grant programs.
Thank you, Lauren. Important distinction there. If we can, along the same lines, this question is, can a BRIC project use multiple federal funding sources if the costs are separated and specific to each funding source? In other words, not treated as match.
Yeah, great follow-up. So per both the federal regulation and the Stafford Act, BRIC funds can't be used to satisfy the cost share or matching requirement for other federal programs similar to, or just as mentioned in the last question. However, applicants can use BRIC and other federal grant funds, such as Environmental Protection Agency or Federal Highway Administration, for example, funds, together to deliver a complete mitigation project, provided that each federal funding source is applied to distinct eligible activities and project costs are clearly designated and tracked, that no duplication of benefit occurs, so federal funds cannot be used to match other federal funds, and total federal funding cannot exceed the total cost of the project. The BRIC cost share must be met with non-federal funds, so can't use EPA funds as cost share for BRIC projects. And all federal requirements for each funding source must be met independently. So the BRIC portion, requirements for the BRIC portion of the project need to meet BRIC requirements. And if EPA were leveraged, for example, that entity would also have to meet the requirements for the EPA portion of the project that was funded.
Thank you for that important response. I want to ask about data sources. And here's a question. Can you please clarify what specific criteria and data sources will be used to verify subapplicants designated as small impoverished communities?
Sure. So we'll be using data from the US Census to measure population size and income, and we'll use that. Those will be the data sources that we'll use to determine small impoverished community status. Community information will be also gathered from the materials that are submitted in the sub-application to determine the community's boundaries. And this will apply to both the national competition scoring criteria and the cost share determinations, the 90-10 cost share determination for small impoverished communities. I will also use this opportunity to plug a recently released program support material that provides additional guidance around exactly this and provides links to that US Census data that we will be leveraging. So highly recommend referencing the program support material that's posted on our website for additional information on this and other components of the national competition scoring criteria.
Lauren, thank you very much. I would like to get in one more question. Here it is. Can extraordinary circumstances for the planning requirements be granted at the time of application, or is it only at the time of award?
Thanks, John. So applicants and subapplicants must have a current approved hazard mitigation plan at the time of application deadline and at the time of award for projects. Extraordinary circumstances are available for subapplicants if they don't have an approved plan as outlined in this funding opportunity. However, I will clarify that the extraordinary circumstance must be granted in advance of the application deadline, and that approval should be included with the sub-application. So included as an attachment to the sub-application that will help us verify that extraordinary circumstances are in place. If an extraordinary circumstance is not in place and there is not an approved hazard mitigation plan, the associated project sub-application may be deemed ineligible.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
And thank you to the subject matter experts that helped to provide these great answers. As we get ready to have our closing, we want to remind again and put up a slide to ask you, please, to take a few minutes to complete our survey. We really would like to improve future deliveries, so we have the survey link that is available to you here. And also, you might also receive a separate notice from Zoom inviting you to take the survey. So please help us out with that. And now, as we begin our closing, I'm happy to turn it over to our Assistant Administrator for the Hazard Mitigation Directorate, Kristen Fontenot. Kristen?
Thanks, John. And thank you all for joining us today. And thanks to the entire FEMA team and our partners who helped support this webinar and provide all this information to you. Most importantly, though, thank you to our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners who are doing the work of mitigation every single day. BRIC is about helping communities reduce future disaster losses before they happen. And that work starts with strong partnerships, clear priorities, and projects that can make a real difference. As you prepare your applications, I am encouraging you to focus on 3 important things. First, start early. Make sure your SAM.gov registration, unique entity identifier, FEMA Go access, and required documentation are all in place. Second, be clear. A strong application should clearly explain the risk, the proposed solution, project readiness, and how the project will reduce future losses. And third, stay connected. Work with your FEMA regional contacts, state hazard mitigation officers, tribal liaisons, and explore technical assistance resources online, which I know we've been talking about at FEMA.gov. Please note that while support and resources may be available, they are not guaranteed for all applicants. We expect applications to be highly competitive and anticipate receiving more applications this year than the funding that's available. FEMA's goal is not just to receive applications. Our goal is to support strong projects that lead to stronger outcomes for communities across the country. Thank you again for your time today, your partnership, and your commitment to reducing disaster risk nationwide. We look forward to seeing the projects that you bring forward. Before we close, I'm going to say the same thing John just said, and I'm going to ask you all to truly complete the webinar survey. The link is available on the screen and through the Zoom platform, and honestly, your feedback really does help us improve future deliveries. Thank you so much again for your time today.